Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is a webinar presented by Plan Your Meetings. It is called Contract Negotiation, Prepared and Fair are Effective in Any Market. The disembodied voice that you hear right now is Christy Casey Sanders. I am the Chief Storyteller for Plan Your Meetings, and I'll be your virtual moderator. So if you have questions, you'll see if you're viewing from the YouTube page that there is a little button that says Q&A. You can push that, it'll pop out a viewing window, and in that viewing window there is a place where you can type in your questions. So if you want to test that out, you can tell me where you're viewing from. I'm coming to you from Atlanta. This is our speaker, Christy LaMagna, and she is coming to you from, which airport are you in, Christy?
I am at the United Club Lounge at Newark International Airport in New Jersey.
Excellent. And where are you going right after this broadcast?
As soon as we're done, I'm about to get online to board a flight for Rome. So, yeah. Yippee!
Awesome. So, I want to tell our viewers a little bit more about you. For those of you who aren't familiar with Christy, Christy LaMagna, CMP, CMM, CTSM, also known as @SME Christy with a CH and a Y, is the founder and chief strategist of Strategic Meetings and Events, an event planning company that specializes in producing events that achieve clients' marketing and sales goals. With an ability to see the big picture while simultaneously understanding events down to the minutia, Christy's ability to create, market, and execute programs has made her a leader in the industry. A former vice president of a Fortune 20 company and a member of 5 startup organizations, Christy has built successful marketing, event, travel, and trade show departments for companies while helping them create or strengthen their brands and the infrastructure that supports them. Christy teaches event and meeting management classes at a college level, and she's working on an industry textbook on the science of strategic planning, as well as how to take over the world. She speaks at industry events whenever possible as a way of giving back to the profession that has given her 24 years of career satisfaction. She is a frequent contributor to Plan Your Meetings. She pens solo advice columns as well as co-writes the popular Beauty and the Brain blog. So, Christy, take it away.
Hi. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. For many of you, the thought of negotiating a contract is it worries you. It's one of the worst things that you can think of about your job. And for me, contract negotiation is one of my favorite things to do. And I tell people 2 things. 1, if you're afraid of it, that's a wish, and the wish is that you were better at it. And 2, if you are good at something most other people are not, it's going to make you more valuable in the workplace. And people automatically turn to you and ask you for your advice. So by learning a few simple tips about contract negotiation, you're going to decrease your anxiety level, end up with stronger meetings, and you'll elevate your place in your office, because most folks aren't going to take the time that you're taking today to learn these things. So thank you for joining us. One of the things that we need to know about contracts is that not all contracts are the same. In terms of a contract that I negotiate today is different than a contract I negotiated 5 years ago, even if it's for the same event at the same property. And the reason for that is because there are buyers markets and sellers markets. So if you were planning meetings in 2008, when the economy was really not doing well, hotels were calling us saying, hey, do you have any meetings? We've got great offers. We can give you a free reception. They were begging us for business. For any of you who have picked up the phone and tried to place a meeting in the last 12 months, you may be finding that rates have gone up, space is harder to find, first, second, and third option for dates are already gone. We are currently experiencing a seller's market. One of the things that I believe is if you follow the tips that I'm going to share with you, your contract negotiation process shouldn't be all that different, because if you're fair and you're reasonable, that works in a buyer's market or a seller's market, hence the title of our slides. So one of the things, though, that we do need to do is adjust the way we plan depending on what type of market it is. So for those of you whose employer comes to you and says, I'd like to plan a sales meeting 3 months from now, you're going to need to really be flexible about either the space that you need, the dates that you can book the meeting, or where you're going to book the meeting, because hotels don't have a whole lot of inventory just waiting for you to give a phone call. So if you can't be flexible, you need to plan ahead. I'm booking space for 2016 and 2017 right now, and one of the things you can do is put the space on first right refusal so that the dates are being protected, but you don't actually have to go to contract, and it will buy you a little bit of time. So being creative is certainly going to help you. You want to leverage your spend. If you plan more than one meeting a year, if you identify with a particular brand and your company likes one chain over another, or goes to that particular chain when they're traveling on business, approach that chain for your meetings. Leverage your total spend and say, I have 5 meetings this year. I'd like to work with you to place all 5 meetings, and our corporate executives go to this hotel when they travel. I'd like to leverage our corporate spend with our event spend, and that may help you. The way to do that, you need to have either a national or a global sales rep from that hotel chain who can help you place more than one meeting at a time. And those are easy enough to find. You can go to a website and ask, who's my local rep? Explore new destinations. Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, high traffic areas, Las Vegas. Those are really hard to find space in right now. So perhaps you can look at a second tier city, which are also beautiful. Have you been to Boston? Have you been to Atlanta? Texas, huge state, lots of space. If you really want to get creative and look for fabulous rates and an abundance of space, you can go to a Detroit, to a Kansas, to a Minneapolis. Those destinations are still hungry for business, will absolutely bend over backwards for you, and you may end up, because you're creative and flexible, you may get what you need. You just have to be a little bit creative about it. So if we talk a little bit about now, on my next slide, we talk about clarity. So you need to know what your program's specific goals are. And your goal is not to have a meeting, okay? Your goal is, I want my employees to learn about XYZ, or to be on an incentive trip and to be rewarded. Those things are going to help you figure out not just what property you choose, what location you go to, and what things are important to you. If this is a sales meeting and your goal is for your 250 salespeople to leave that 3-day training with a tremendous amount of new information, the amount of space you have is critical. So your goal is, I need a ballroom, a feed and seat area, and 10 breakouts, because this for me is all about content. If this is an incentive trip, your goal is, I would like to be the big fish at the hotel. I want to basically take over the property, have my guests be their only focus of attention, and I want to make sure we get the best cabanas, the VIP, everything. So know the goal of the meeting, and that's going to help you approach the contract, because you know what's important to you. For an incentive trip, you don't care about meeting space. For a sales meeting, you don't care necessarily about 10% or 15% discounts at a spa. So understand the program's specific goals. It's going to help you. You need to make sure that all the people who are responsible for this meeting, whoever's signing the checks, whoever is the owner of the meeting, make sure that they share your vision. A lot of times you think you know what you're doing. An executive has changed their mind, hasn't told you. Each thinks they know what the other is thinking, and there's a disconnect there. So go back to whomever it is who's funding this meeting or in charge of it and say, this is what I'm thinking. Are we on the same page? Know what you need versus what you want, and they're two different things. From someone who loves to shop, I know the difference between what I think I need versus what I want, and sadly they're sometimes two different things. So what you want to do is understand the difference between, I would like to have 10 breakout rooms, I need 7, but I'd like to have 10 because I want some extra space. So know the difference between what you need and what you want. And realize that what you want comes with a price. If I need 10 breakout rooms, then my food and beverage minimum is going to be higher, or I may need to pay for some of that space. There is a price for you getting what you ask for. If you need rock bottom sleeping rates and you can only pay $99 for a sleeping room, you may need to pay meeting room rental or have a much higher food and beverage. So realize that what you get does have a price associated with it. Know your bottom line. I have $100,000 to spend at the venue, whether it's room rental, food and beverage, audiovisual, whatever it is, that's how much money I have. Know what your bottom line is, because as you're negotiating, if you can't go up by $15 a head for the room nights, it doesn't matter if the hotel is willing to negotiate with you in other spots. You need to know where your drop dead point is. A lot of people will tell you that contract negotiation is very much like playing chess, and that is true. It is about strategy, and I like to look at it in some ways as entertaining, but it's not a game. Say what you mean what you say. This isn't a time to be cryptic. It's not, don't ask for 3 times more than you want because you're going to try and meet in the middle. Value everyone's time. Say what you mean and mean what you say, and that's going to go a long way. So, which brings us to my next thought, which is on our next slide. It talks about your approach is key to the process. I love contract negotiation. So when I pick up the phone to talk to someone, I'll start off with, I know this is crazy, but I am so excited to have this conversation with you because I love negotiating contracts. That sets the conversation off to a good start. For people who, if you're afraid of negotiating contracts, or you believe that a contract is something where the person is an opponent, the bullet says, remember there's a person on the other side of the phone, not an opponent. This isn't about you getting as much as you can from me for as little as possible. Both sides need to walk away with a happy, and both are coming to the table with a shared goal. The venue wants you to book. You want to book at the venue. Our goal is for me to come to your space and for you to have my business. So although I want to save as much money perhaps as possible and you want to make as much money as possible, our shared goal is for us to sign this contract. So the other person is not an opponent. The other person is your partner. The contract is the first step in the planning process. So if the contract doesn't go well, if you beat the life out of the person on the other end of the phone and they sign something that they resent you for, the rest of the process is going to be awful. The contract is not the end, it's the beginning, and it sets the tone for everything down the line. The other thing you need to remember, especially if contracts make you nervous, this isn't about you, this isn't personal. So if you have a request and the hotel says we absolutely can't do that, it's not for you to get offended. They're not saying no to you, they're saying no to the request that your company is making. The minute you get confused about this is about you, your conversation is immediately going to get derailed, and we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. You want to communicate clearly, calmly, and precisely. What you are saying and what you are thinking could be two completely different things. So when you say, I need all the meeting space, or I need all your space, the hotel may think you need all their meeting space. You may be thinking, I also need your public space, I need your outdoor space, and you're saying, I need all your space. They're interpreting it as meeting space, you're interpreting it as indoor and outdoor space. Be very, very, very clear. Explain what you value and why. Sometimes you may say, you know, I'd really like to do my reception outdoors. I was really thinking of your garden terrace. And the hotel comes back to you, and if you just say, I need the garden terrace, and that's where you leave it, the hotel's going to say yes or no. If you say, I'd love to use the garden terrace because I'm thinking that's a great space for my welcome reception, the person on the other end of the phone may say, you know what, you're right, it is, but even more beautiful is the pool, and this is how we can use that space. So communicate what you want and communicate why, because the person on the other end of the phone, since they manage that space all the time, they may have a good idea for you. So that goes back to be very clear about what it is that you want and explain your why.
Hey, Christy, I have a question
Sure.
that's coming in from Mike McAllen.
Hi, Mike.
The question is, how do I bring up the conversation about specific goals of the meeting when my client is just worried about logistics? So he says that he often runs into it. It's all about the price. He wants it to be a great meeting for the attendees.
Okay, so one of the things that I would say to Mike is, if you've planned this program before and you know this audience, so if your client is confused and imagines that the goal of the meeting is to get the best price, which is not, they're not having this meeting to get a great price. They're having the meeting to, if it's a sales meeting, are they trying to impart knowledge on the guests? Is it an incentive trip? They're trying to reward them. So if your client won't give you the information that you need to be strategic and figure out what is the purpose of this meeting. And perhaps if they're saying it's a focus group, it's a road show, it's a sales meeting, it's an incentive trip, in the title is part of your answer. So when you talk to them about goals and you say to them, I understand, I would say to my client, okay, I understand that our goal is to get a price between $99 and $129, and that's your threshold. After I get that done, tell me what else is important to you. Are we looking to be able to do front screen projection, rear screen projection? Are you looking to do off-site dinners? Do you want to spend as much time on property as possible, because then I have room to negotiate my food and beverage minimums? Start with, I understand $129 is your rate threshold. After I get that done, let's talk about what else is important to you. So I would answer their objection about, this is the only thing I care about, and try and take it one step further. If they won't answer the question, you kind of need to step in and think for that client, which sometimes is what they're paying you to do. Save them from themselves. The goal of the meeting is not to have a $99 room rate. Talk to the hotel and say, historically, this has been a sales meeting. the attendees are very engaged, the attendees are not engaged, and that will also help if you've got a bunch of attendees who are disengaged because it's the company is dying, they're not making a lot of money. You may want to have action stations for your breaks and do things that bring some energy and some life into the process to once again go back to the goal. They don't even know what the goal is. You do. This is an unhappy audience. All they care about is money. So you can help them invigorate this audience by how you plan the meeting, and you can work some of that into your negotiating. And Mike, if that didn't answer your question, type to Christy again, and I can keep going. Anything else?
Not right now.
Okay. So much like Mike, one of the things I say is don't be afraid to ask questions. I will absolutely say to a hotel, I've been doing this for 24 years, and I will still say, I did this yesterday, there's a phrase in this that I don't understand. I just read a contract and it said, if you have more people than expected, your group will be relocated. And I said, to where? We're buying out the entire restaurant. Where would you relocate me to? What does that mean? And a lot of times they'll say, oh, actually, that's a mistake, and they'll fix it. So I'm amazed at how many people don't read contracts, including the people who send them to me. So ask a question, because oftentimes it's you finding a mistake in the contract that no one's paying any attention to. Read every word. Precise words are chosen for a reason. The words in that contract are not there by accident. So one of my favorites and one of my best examples, when a hotel talks about a cancellation, or they're talking about damages, and they say, should you cancel this meeting, the hotel will be harmed. The hotel may be harmed. We don't know that the hotel will be harmed. I use an example of I booked a huge block of rooms at a property that had a gambling license. In the amount of time between when I signed the contract and when I got on property, their gambling license had been upgraded. So now all of a sudden they could have blackjack and craps, and the casino was in huge demand. When they signed my contract, it wasn't, so I got fabulous rates. They were begging me to drop rooms because their rates had better than doubled since I signed the contract. All they wanted was for me to not be able to fill my block. So had I dropped rooms, the hotel would have been in better shape because they could have sold them for much more. So the hotel will be harmed, the hotel may be harmed. We don't know what's going to happen. So the difference between will and may makes a huge difference. One of the other things is you need to protect yourself. These documents are for the what-ifs. So when a hotel has a clause that says the hotel in its sole and exclusive judgment can, or in its sole and exclusive direction, may cancel for any reason your space or may cancel your space for any reason. And I'll say, well, I won't sign anything that says in your sole and in your sole discretion. No, I'm the other half of this contract. And the person on the other end of the phone says, oh, Christy, we would never do that to you. That's not the end of the conversation. That's the beginning of the conversation, because I then very pleasantly say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're on the same page. So if you would never do that, you have no problem crossing this out then. And when there's a dead silence on the other end of the phone, that is a little bit like the chess that we play, because if you've just admitted to me it's never going to happen, then you can take...
Oh, please stand by. We are experiencing a little bit of a audio difficulty.
Okay. Is it on my end?
It was, but now you're back. So you can go ahead. You dropped out just a little bit when you were talking about you called the woman's bluff. She said that it would never happen, and you said that she could strike it out of the contract, and there was silence at the end of the phone.
Right. So because if you're telling me that would never happen, then my response is, well, then if we agree that this is impossible, then you won't miss the clause when it's gone. So, and you can do it firmly, but very nicely, and get what you need. But if there is something that you absolutely disagree with, then you need to make sure that you take care of that, because when the hotel says that will never happen, you know what? My whole point is the contract is for when the unexpected happens. So for the contract to say, we will cancel your meeting space if your payment is late. Okay, well, that can't happen. You need to call me first. So although it's unlikely, you've got my credit card on file, it's automatically being charged, you don't sign it because you have just said if the payment is late, then they can cancel your space. What if American Express goes offline for a day? Legally, they can cancel your contract. It doesn't matter that they wouldn't, they can, so you need to address that. and that is something that I'm an incredible stickler about. The other thing on our next slide, we talk about it's not about you. It's really hard to keep in mind throughout the process. It's your meeting, you're responsible for negotiating. You get emotionally attached. This isn't about you. So you need to approach the conversation with the person on the other end of the phone needs to understand what's in it for them to take your business. So instead of you getting on the phone doing an opera singer, me, 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 they want to hear about them. So you want to sell the person on the other end of the phone as to why they want your business. Because like we said in the beginning, hotels are not just saying, yes, we have the space, or no, we don't have the space. They may have the space, and if your group is not that attractive to them, they're going to say no thank you. So the contract process is still an opportunity for the hotel or the potential client to walk away. So you need to go into this explaining to the hotel why they want your business, what's in it for them to take your money. So you need to be able to explain what you want and explain your why. And in order to do that, you need to understand your why. I have a client who wants all space on 24-hour hold from the minute we get there until the minute we leave. Every space. It doesn't matter if we need 5 rooms, we'll buy all 15 and pay for them. They don't care. And the hotel will say, well, you know, we'll rent that out to someone else because you won't be using it. No, for this client, privacy is so important they'll pay for it. So you need to understand that I do need this space on 24-hour hold. You may not sell it to anyone else. You may not do a site inspection. You may not bring other people into this space while I am here, and here's why. And then it makes sense to them. So explaining what you need is often helpful. The same way, if you ask for something and the answer is no, ask why. So if I say I need all my space on 24-hour hold and they say we can't do that, I'll say, okay, help, and the phrase that I'll use is help me understand why that's not possible. And if they say, well, we can't put it on 24-hour hold because union contracts dictate that it's got to be, okay, that's good to know. So let's instead create a clause that says my space will not be rented, sold, shown, or used in any way by another group. It's the same goal. You get to the same place. You just get there with a different road. So, and which goes to ask for alternatives to any requests that are declined. So that goes back to you can potentially write another clause that says the same thing. Remember, you can escalate the conversation if you feel like if you're not making headway, which goes back to having a national or a global sales rep who you could pick up the phone and say, I need some help. I don't think this person's truly understanding what it is that I need or doesn't value my business from a global scale. Could you help me? And sometimes people will step in. I've had to do that on more than one occasion. So you draw upon your hotel sales team resources if you need additional help. It happens, and sometimes it really does come in handy. On our next slide, never ask for something that causes the other side to lose. You cannot go into this saying, you can't beat them with a club and then expect them to be happy about working with you. Be upfront throughout the process. I love that you want to give me, these rooms at $179, but I have to be honest with you, I have $169. That's all I have. I have a food and beverage budget that I can give you more money from, so if you want to increase my food and beverage spend from $18,000 to $22,000, you can make some money there. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't because the money goes into different buckets, but just be upfront throughout the process and that will help. Remember that emotion drowns reason. The minute you feel threatened, you get your temper up, you start to get aggravated, you've been on the phone too long and you're cranky, you know what? We scheduled 45 minutes for this call. We're at the 45-minute mark. Thanks so much. We need to continue this at another time, which is why I'm very specific about how long I will schedule for call. And I will say, I'm looking forward to talking to you today from 2 to 2:45, so that if things start to go south, I have an out, because at 2:45, I'm off the phone. So if you feel like you're starting to get worked up, you can either very simply say, you know what, I need to continue this call at another time, or, oh, look, we're out of time. It's 45 minutes, got to go. You need to exhale. You need to get recentered. It's not about you. The minute you get emotional, you lose all perspective. The conversation is not going to turn out right for either party when emotion gets involved. If you have clauses that you require and that you know that you want, send them to the hotel in advance. I put my key clauses in an RFP so that when I send out my request for proposal, I will say to the venue, these are the things that I cannot live without. If you cannot live with these clauses, do not respond to this RFP. I take it one step further. When they send me the contract, I send them my template of clauses for this particular client, so I can review their document, they can review mine, and we're not surprising each other. It's here's everything up front, and then we have a conversation. Have a backup plan if you don't get the results you need. I've walked away from contracts and gone back to the client and said, if you sign this document, you will be miserable. I know you want this space. Hotel, our second choice hotel, we kept them on hold. We're going to do much better there, and here's why. Sometimes they agree with me, sometimes they don't. If they don't agree with you, they sign the contract and you hope for the best. If they do agree with you, I don't like to reward bad behavior. I go to the next hotel, say, this is why I'm here. Can you help me resolve these issues? Will you work me? And if they say yes, you're in good shape. So, which brings me to the last point on the slide, which is you need to be willing to walk away from the deal. If you can't, you need to realize that you may not get what you want. You can't do anything about it, because if you're stuck, you're stuck. Really important in contract negotiations, if you end up editing the document, the first page is usually about room blocks, and you want this many rooms on Monday, this many rooms on Tuesday, this many rooms Wednesday, and you edit that. Further in the document, it will also say you are responsible for X number of room nights. If you change the document up front, it may not have been changed further on in the body of the document, so you need to make sure that all your figures match, because if they don't, who's to say which one's right and which one's wrong? In the situation that you're in a court of law, and one page says you owe the hotel 200 room nights and another page says you owe them 400, it's up to now a third party because your document isn't clear. Double check that your dates and room nights are listed correctly. How many of us have said, you know, today is Tuesday the 9th? Okay, today's Tuesday, but it's not the 9th, so make sure the date and the day match up, and that some people, because we're in 2014 and we're talking about an event in May, they look at May's calendar, but you're talking about a 2015 event, so make sure that your dates and your room nights are listed correctly. Confirm that all your edits appear and are consistent throughout the document. If the hotel initially says you need to meet 90% of your block to get these concessions and you negotiate it down to 80, you need to make sure that that is reduced to 80 throughout the document, because that's usually stated in a few different places. Have the hotel define the costs associated with canceling the program and slippage beyond what you have negotiated. So I need to know if my rooms are attritionable, this is exactly how much per room this is going to cost. Some of us don't know, state by state, if attrition is taxable. In some states it is, in some states it's not. Sometimes the service charge, which is going to get put onto a food and beverage minimum, also taxable, also charged. Have them spell everything out. If you cancel, this is how much you owe in food and beverage. If you cancel per night, it's going to cost you this per room night. Make sure your management team understands the penalties associated with signing the contract before it's signed. If the contract is signed and it says if you cancel, you can owe $60,000, your finance team needs to know that and needs to accrue for it, because that money is spent. Whether you have the meeting or not, if the contract is canceled, they need to know that that money is no longer part of their revenue stream, and that's part of the Sarbanes-Oxley rules. So you have to share that contract with your finance team. The fun part, let's make a deal on the next slide. There are lots of things that you can ask for, and you can get really creative. One of the things that you should be able to do is speak to, like Mike was saying, you know, what are the group's goals? If he's done this meeting before, he can go to that hotel and say, this is historically what we've done. We're big drinkers. Where there's alcohol, there's huge profit, much more so than food. So, you know, we don't have huge meals, but these guys drink all night. The hotel values that. We have a huge room block. We don't eat that much, but our room block is huge. Hotels value heads and beds. If you do have an attrition situation, I absolutely insist on paying only for the hotel's profit. Going back to, if we cancel, the hotel may be harmed. Okay, I'll agree you may be harmed, but if the room is empty and 30% of your operating cost is to keep when that room is used, and you've just told me the room was empty, I'll pay you 70%. So if the room rate is $100 and the room is empty, I'll pay $70 for each attritionable room, but I will not pay $100 because you didn't pay housekeeping, no one used the soap, no one was using electricity, there was no wear and tear on the room. Most of the time, a hotel will tell you yes. Sometimes a hotel will say to me, our profit margin is 80%. I take them at their word. I just don't want to pay for something that I don't need to. And I will say to them, I cannot explain, I can only ask my client to sign a document that's fair. I don't think it's fair for them to make up profit and expenses. The profit, yes, the expenses, no. Again, explain what you want and why, and usually that helps. So the industry standard profit on sleeping rooms is 70%, and the industry standard profit on food is 30%, which makes sense. For food, you have to buy the food, so that's 70% of the cost, so 70 cents of every dollar is for the cost of the food. If you cancel a meeting, I'll usually say 2 weeks out, you should only pay for the profit on the food because they didn't buy it yet. From a week out, 2 weeks out is generous. They usually order the food between 7 and 3 days before the event, but I'll usually say 2 weeks out, I'll pay you the profit. I'm not paying you for food you didn't buy. And it's tough for them to argue that. Again, explain your why, know your why, be fair. It's hard to fight with that argument because I'm going to make you whole on the profit. You didn't order the food. You're not out that money. The other thing, negotiate out room rental fees in return for your food and beverage minimum to be higher if you can. Some people, even though you're spending the same amount of money, you get more value out of the food, and clients will sometimes look at a room rental as a huge waste of money, whereas if they can upgrade their menu, that's a win-win. I have clients who will pay room rental fees because they simply want the space. It depends on who your client is and what their goals are. You've probably done a site visit, but you do want to go back and do a tie-down meeting. So request a complimentary tie-down meeting. A lot of times you'll get a free site visit. You should be able to get a free tie-down meeting, 2 people, 1 overnight, to do all your fine-tuning or to do a tasting. I ask for those. I usually get them. Other things that you can ask for, 1 per 40 comp rooms. So for every 40 room nights, you get 1 for free. Hotels will give you usually 1 for 50. I try and get 1 for 40. Back in the day, it was 1 for 35. Those days are gone. Staff rooms should be billed at a discounted rate if you can, because you can get a room that has a view of a brick wall. You can get a room that's on a lower floor. If you're anything like me, when you're at a hotel, you don't see, I don't know what's outside my window. I sleep in the bed for 5 hours if I'm lucky. The room makes no difference to me. So you can work with the hotel and say, you can give us run-of-house rooms that you usually wouldn't give a guest. We'll take them, don't care, charge us less. And they usually will work with me on that to a certain degree. I can't have 15 staff members, but for 5, they will work with me. Have your attrition billed cumulatively. That's huge. If you have shoulder dates, which are the 3 days pre and post your meeting, and people are coming in early or staying late, those people should count towards your room block. If you have a huge amount of people who come Monday and then everybody drops off on Wednesday, but you had 20 more people than you needed Monday, that should count towards your overall block. So you should need to fill 500 room nights, not 100 rooms over 5 nights. It makes a huge difference. So you want your attrition to be calculated on the profit, and you want it calculated cumulatively. And the other thing that I do that so many people don't ask for, you want your attrition based on the category of room that you dropped. So a lot of times the hotel will say, we will credit you, you won't be charged attrition if we're in a sold-out situation. I'll ask them, well, how many penthouse suites do you have? If they have 3 presidential suites or penthouse suites that go for $3,000 a night, my dropping 10 run-of-house rooms didn't affect that. So if it is a hotel with multiple category rooms, and I dropped run-of-house rooms, their deluxe suites were not affected directly by my run-of-house drop. So I write into the contract, I will only pay attrition on the profit cumulatively for the category of rooms that I have dropped. If we need to compromise, because they won't do that for me, I will have them take out the top 2 categories of rooms. I will not pay for the suites, or the executive suites, and I will not pay for the presidential penthouses, because those have nothing to do with my group. And at the very least, I usually get that into the contract, which is helpful. If you're in an attrition situation, I always call the front desk and say, hi, I'd like to get a room for this evening. If they tell me they're sold out, thank you very much, can I ask your name? Write it down, and when they come to the next day to do the rooming report, and you say, well, I'm not paying attrition for last night because you were sold out. They tell you that they weren't. Yeah, you know what? I spoke to Gina at the front desk last night at 7:43, and she told me you were. So, trust then verify. So you want to do all that, but then when you're on site, you do still want to make sure you continue to do your homework. Try and get your group rate during those shoulder dates, which are 3 days pre and 3 days post. Sometimes your guests want to come in early or stay late. If you negotiate this, it helps you for your pickup. Mike, if your group has an issue or you're trying to help them with goals, maybe a 3 days pre and 3 days post to be able to use that space at a great rate would be helpful. That might help them achieve a goal. Sometimes you need to get a car as the planner, or you've got guests who are driving in, or you've got a local speaker. Ask for complimentary parking passes. If you're in a top-tier city, Manhattan, it's $60 a night to park. It's not an inexpensive convenience. So find out. You also want to find out how many parking spaces they have, because if it's a meeting that you're driving to, you may need to take over their entire parking lot. You need to know how many spots are in their lot, which most people don't know the answer to. And is valet parking complimentary? And if it's not, can you have parking passes? So something else that you can ask for. Other things that are pretty standard, but that if you don't ask, they won't give you. It's so important to remember that they will not offer you things that you do not ask for. So you have to ask. There is no such thing as standard. Ask that your top 3 VIPs get upgraded to suites at a run-of-house rate. Ask the hotel to send the amenity of their choice. And what's in it for the hotel is they'll put a note on the amenity that says, "Dear CEO, we're so happy to have you at our property. Thank you for staying. We've given you this complimentary upgrade and this basket of fruit that you're never going to eat with our compliments." So there's something in it for them. There's something in it for you. And for the executive, they're going to leave saying, "Hey, you know what, Tom? This was a great property because they got treated well. I'd like to go back there next year." So again, explain your why. The happier my CEO and my CFO are at this meeting, the better off you, hotel, are going to be. So upgrade them, give them a gift. It doesn't have to be an elaborate gift, send them a fruit basket. Get a flat rate for the internet access in the ballroom. Staggering how much internet access is. So see if you can get a flat rate. I worry about people being able to check their email in a ballroom because they're there to look at hopefully the content on the screen, not the content on their laptop. But if you need it, try and get a flat rate. And then the way you control it is by making it password protected so that the people who need internet, you're not paying a fortune for. If you don't want the masses to have it, it's password protected and you just don't give out the password. If you're going to use in-house AV, ask for a discount. They'll usually give you a 10% discount, but then what happens is they put the tax and the service charge on top of that. So you end up paying 28.75% on top of the quoted rate. So the 10% off isn't all that helpful. So I usually ask for a 15% discount, and then I ask them, if you look at the next bullet point, to reduce the service rate fees because it becomes incredibly expensive. The business center, the cost to make a copy is usually fairly expensive. So what I'll do is say, okay, there's a big box store, Store X and Store Y, that both are known for their ability to make copies. They would charge me 10 cents for black and white copy, 50 cents for color copy. Here's their price sheet. I downloaded it for you. I would like to give the hotel this business. I would like to use the business center. If you would like for me to use the business center, I just need for you to match the rates of the guy down the street. If you can't, I totally understand. I respect that, but I'm going to go down the street because it's not that big a distance, and I need to know that I'm going to be getting a fair price on this. I'd like to give you the business. Will you work with me? Know your goal, what's in it for them, explain your why. Oftentimes, you'll get what you want, as opposed to, I'm not paying 50 cents for a color copy. That's ridiculous. The guy down the street will do it for 10. Well, that's obnoxious. The person's not an opponent. Speak to them well. Explain why you want what you want. You'll usually get it. If you're shipping in a lot of things, if it's not a union situation, you can usually negotiate flat rate on incoming or outgoing shipments. It's something worth asking. It's something people don't think about until they get their final bill, because the hotel doesn't talk to you about that. You get the final bill, and there's a $500 charge. You say, "What is this?" And you say, "Well, all those fleece sweatshirts you gave out, there were 30 boxes of them, and this is how much it cost. It wasn't in your budget. You didn't think about it. So think through it and try and negotiate it before you get there." Our next slide, know your audience. One size does not fit all. Not everyone wants the same thing, and not all your negotiations are with hotels. So if you are negotiating with a hotel, space, dates, rates. The hotel needs to control one of those 3 things. So think about it. I need all of your space. I absolutely need all of your space, and I need for it to be the first week in March. Those are my 2 things that I'm going to control, and the hotel will say, "Okay, Christy, you can have that. This is what it's going to cost you." If I then come back and say, "But I need it for $99, they'll say to me, "Spectacular. Come back in July, do the program on a Sunday, or give up some space." The hotel has to control one of those things. If you need a rock bottom rate, they may say to you, that's spectacular, we can get you in, but you've got to be a Friday through Sunday pattern. You've got to come in July and it's Las Vegas. There has to be a give and take. So space, dates, rates, hotel needs to control one of them. Figure out what your goal is and you'll know which one you're going to be comfortable letting them be in charge of. Promotional item vendors, the people who you're going to buy your giveaways from, they value return business. So if you can work with one person who has been approved by your procurement department, or you've got 3 vendors approved by procurement, but you can channel most of your business to one vendor, then you could potentially get discounted pricing. And what I've done in the past is said to them, I'd like to establish goals. If I spend X amount of dollars with you a year, I want a 2, 3, 4, 5, 10% rebate. If I spend this much, I want the rebate to go up. So there's money at the end of it. So again, what's in it for them is they get the aggregate of your business. They don't have to worry about, they know that you're going to try and hit $100,000 if that's your goal. So they know that you're potentially good for $100,000. They're going to treat you better. They want you to keep buying. You send your business there. You get used to them. You have a good working relationship. They appreciate it. You appreciate it. Everybody wins. If you have independent contractors, those folks want consistent business. They don't get a paycheck unless they have, you know, the next gig. So what you can say to them is, you know what, I will guarantee you 3, 5, 6, however many events in 2014, but I can't pay a day rate of this. I need your day rate to be that. In exchange, I will guarantee you 10 days of work this year, 20 days of work this year, whatever it is. However, you need to lower your rates. The peace of mind of knowing that they potentially have 10 other dates to work would be worth some money to them, and I've successfully negotiated that. I don't do it if I don't need the money. I'm not going to nickel and dime someone for the sake of doing it, but if their rate is $50 too high and I know I'm going to have 5 events this year, why not know that I've got a fabulous person with me for the entire year? They work with me on the rate, everybody wins. On our next slide, on-site help, a photographer, a travel director, anyone who's there temporarily, they may enjoy staying at the hotel for a day after the program. You get comp rooms, 1 per 40s, or you may be in a attritionable situation. That's another thing to remember. If you're in an attritionable situation, giving comp rooms to people is going to help you. You're paying for the rooms anyway. So to say to your photographer, your florist, whomever, hey, you know what, you've done a fabulous job. I'd love to give you a night at the hotel to thank you for everything you've done. You're paying for the room anyway. It's goodwill, it's strategic, it's something that you should think about. Small business values prompt payment. I have a client who you hear their name and your eyes light up and think, oh my gosh, that must be amazing to work with them. They're 90 days to pay if I'm lucky. So, and they're 90 days from when they acknowledge the invoice, not from when you send the invoice. So I can wait 120 days for payment. That's difficult sometimes if it's a large sum of money. So what I'll do is say, I will give you a discount. If you pay me within 10 days of invoice, you'll get this much of a discount. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's worth the ask because a small business does want that money. Larger businesses perhaps not, but a small business, if you say to them, I'll pay you quickly, you may be able to get a discount on the bill. Speakers oftentimes have books, have CDs, have private coaching, want other speaking engagements. So if you say to that speaker, for in return for you lowering your fee, or for doing an hour instead of 45 minutes, or for doing grip and grin photos after the event, I will allow you to sell your books after the event. I will put your name on our website with a link to your website. I'll allow you to make an offer from the stage, which means, you know, if you choose to work with me after hearing me speak today, you'll get XYZ. They can't do that unless you give them permission. So if you give them an opportunity to make additional revenue from your stage, they will perhaps negotiate a rate with you. What they'll also do is if you say to them, you know you want speaker XYZ, where are you going to be in June? My event is going to be in June. I haven't chosen a location yet. And they say, oh, I'm going to be in Atlanta. And you say, okay, you know what? If I book my event and you're already in Atlanta, will you split your travel fees, because whoever was flying you there, or if that's your home base, then I shouldn't have to pay in both directions. So another easy way to negotiate some things.
Hey, Christy, we have kind of a quiet audience, but I just wanted to let you know we do have an interesting comment from Summer Whitford. Mm-hmm. She wanted you to know that this is the best darn presentation ever.
Thank you, Summer.
and that you've covered all the things that she always discusses with clients, and that you've given practical, real suggestions, strategies, and she just thinks it's a fab job.
Thank you. Yeah, I always get frustrated when you buy a magazine that says, 10 tips to do something, and you read it and say, really? Because I knew that already. So I'm glad you said that, because I really wanted to give you things that you haven't already heard, and that if you give me what's in it for me, you gave me an hour. What's in it for you? I want you to walk away with things that you can use. So it really is important to me that this time is useful to you. So thank you, Summer, very much.
Yeah, and just as a reminder to our virtual viewing audience, if you haven't found out the Q&A app yet or how it works, you should be able to push that from the viewing page, and then it pops out a window where you can type in your questions. We do have another 15 minutes left. If you're not on that platform, if you're on Twitter taking notes, you can also tweet questions at PYM Live, or tag them yay PYM, YAYPYM, like on the slides when we go back to that. And I'll also be monitoring that. And if you're watching this on demand, you can always add comments, and we'll get back to you and respond to you whenever we're able to.
When I'm back in the country.
Yeah, we're back in the country.
Yes. The other thing that isn't on the slides is hotels value repeat business as well. So for you to say to the hotel while you're negotiating your 2014 contract, I have this meeting every year. It's in both of our best interests for me to come back here potentially next year if it's a sales meeting, so difference in destination may not matter. So it would work to both of our advantage if I could come back next year. So what I would like to do is put a clause in this year's contract that says if we rebook, we will be guaranteed this year's food spend, rates, concessions for next year. So it's never too early to start planning ahead. Even if I may not go back to that hotel the following year, you don't know what's going to happen. So I will try and put that into my contract the same way I put in a clause that says if I have to cancel, for whatever reason, things happen, I would like a rebook clause. And what the rebook clause tells me, or says, is that if you rebook this meeting within, and I try and make it within 12 months, a lot of times they'll tell me it has to be within the calendar year, you can put, I always ask for 100% of the money that I have put down, apply it to your next meeting. A lot of times a hotel will work with you on that, so that if you do have to cancel, you want to be protected. My clients have come to me after we have signed a contract and said, oh my gosh, we're having a huge layoff, 25% of our group isn't coming. And they're freaking out. And I'll say to them, that's okay. It's awful. I mean, my gosh, it's never good that someone's gotten laid off. However, I've got you protected 6 ways from Sunday for this contract. I've got your attrition clause that's cumulative. I've got your just pay on profit clause. I've got your only on the room categories we cancel clause. The other thing that I do when negotiating is a resell clause. And what that says is the hotel will take all practical steps to resell our rooms. Any money that they gain from the resale of our rooms will offset our attrition penalty. The hotel won't do that if you don't ask them to. And they will resell those rooms, but they won't take the money off your attrition penalty if you do not ask. So when my clients come to me and say, holy cow, we're going to be in an attritionable situation, there are a lot of things that I can do to mitigate those damages because I thought ahead. And if I have a good relationship with the hotel and call them and say, oh my gosh, the client's having a huge attrition issue, can you work with me? Oftentimes they will. So one of the other things that I do.
Please stand by. Christy, we seem to be having a little bit of audio problem again, so please stay tuned. We are working to get the audio back. Christy, it looks like you are back. Can you speak for me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we're good.
Curious, I haven't moved, so okay. One of the things that I will do is ask the hotel for the resale clause. I will ask them, and if you don't ask, they won't give it to you. So if I come back to the hotel and say, oh my gosh, we're in a terrible attrition situation, they'll work with me. What I was just saying is a hotel will ask you about a month in advance for your housing list. If the group isn't calling in to make their own reservations, they want a housing list. And I'll say to them, either if this is an external audience or either way, a month out, my group doesn't know what day they're coming in, what day they're leaving. So we have two options. Would you like me to send you a housing list and have the names Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Peter Pan on the list because you say you need a housing list, or do you want to give me an extra 2 weeks and you'll get real names on the list? Either way, what I always ask for is name changes will be permitted until the day of check-in at no additional charge, because that saves you so that if it is an external audience, you're 2 weeks out, oh my gosh, I don't want to cancel the rooms, but I don't know who's coming because it's an external audience. I fill that rooming list with names of friends and relatives as well as famous movie stars so that I buy myself some time. It's a game internally to figure out, do I drop the rooms? Do I keep the rooms? Are my guests notoriously late in registering? Do I want to drop these rooms as quickly as possible so I could potentially resell them? One of the things that I will also try and negotiate is if I drop the rooms and need them back, I can get them at the rate that I dropped them for. So if you negotiated a great rate of $99, you drop the rooms, the hotel's selling them for $300. If you want them back, I try and get them for the rate that I negotiated. That doesn't always work. It's worth the ask. The worst they're going to say is no, and then you've got the same problem you started with. So I'm never afraid to ask, and I will always explain why. So that's helpful. I have literally 100 contract clauses. I love each one more than the next. So, and they all have a purpose.
Christy, we did have a couple of comments that came in. Sandra Reagan is wondering if this will be available later to view because she's having some problems on her end with the video. And yes, there will be a YouTube link. So I'm going to post that on the event page, and I'll also distribute it. For those of you who need continuing education credits for this presentation, I do have a document that I will upload to this page so that you can then download it and use that for your certification. And Summer Whitfield is still appreciative of you, and she wanted to thank you for stressing rebook, resell, attrition. It's always an area meeting planners are afraid to handle, and that can be costly if not negotiated in the contract. And she also wanted to thank you for your tips on negotiating the speaker's fees. Because from a speaker's perspective, sometimes that's difficult for a speaker to say, hey, can I sell my book, or can I do this, or do whatever. But that is something that they are very willing to go down on price for.
And in the very beginning, we talked about what's in it for me. So if, meaning the person you're negotiating with, so if you think about who they are, I'm a speaker. So as a speaker, I want to speak. So what I value is the opportunity to speak again. Think about what I value. One size does not fit all. Give me the things that I want, because to me, it may have more value than what it has to you, but that's why it's a negotiation. As we wind down on our last slide, just some key points I'd like you to remember that are really, really important. Identify your goals before you begin the process. It boggles my mind when people get on the phone, when planners get on the phone to negotiate a contract and they haven't read the contract yet, and they're not quite clear on what it is that they need. Don't waste time. Do your homework. Know what your goals are. Truly what your goals are, not what you think your goals are. Negotiations are not successful unless both sides win. Everything about life, if you think about it, this webinar was a negotiation. The audience is going to give me an hour of their time. In return for that, I need to give you content. In order for us to both leave happy, I want to hang up thinking folks paid attention and they got something out of it. You want to hang up thinking this was worth an hour. This was a negotiation. Both sides have to win. So the fact that you're emailing Christy with your comments allows me to feel good. The fact that I'm giving you content you need allows you to feel good. So same thing with a contract. Both sides need to be happy. Your time has a currency. My information is a currency. We traded them. We're both happy. Know the difference between what you want and what you need and what you're willing to do to get there. That's the other piece. I need these rooms to be $99 a night. Okay, apparently I have to go to a third-tier city to make that happen. If you're willing to pay that price, then that's fine. Don't ask for anything you can't defend, are not proud of, or would not agree to if you were asked for it. I never ask for things I can't defend. And the most important thing, Christy had told you that I've been doing this for 24 years, which is crazy because in my mind I graduated college 2 years ago and suddenly 24 years have gone by. It's a small industry and people are in it for a long time. I have bumped into people who I knew when I was a puppy and was 2 years into this. People remember you for better or for worse. 15 years ago, I did a negotiation with a hotel where my introduction to the hotel manager was, "Hi, I need to cancel 6 figures worth of business. Haha, nice to meet you." It was my second day on the job. That person said to me, "Christy, you must be so overwhelmed. This is a brand new job. I can't even imagine how you feel. Absolutely, we'll work with you." 15 years later, I remember the guy, I remember the hotel, I still send him business, and he's one of my favorite people in the world because he looked at it as what was in it for him. 15 years later, I'm still in the industry. He's gotten more business from me than I canceled because he went about this with, I wasn't an opponent. What was in it for him? Future business. What was in it for me? He helped me solve an enormous problem. It was a coming together, not an adversarial process. So people are going to remember you, whether you're a delightful negotiator or whether you're not. They're going to remember you. I teach a college class, and one of the things that I say to my students is, how do people feel when you walk into a room? How do people feel when you dial the phone and they pick it up and they hear, "Hi, this is Christy"? If you don't think about how you are perceived, that affects everything. So it is incumbent upon you as you go into the negotiation process to be fair, to be honest, and to be pleasant. This is not about who's going to win. This is about both sides starting a relationship with a document they can trust, that they can rely upon, and that if you win lotto and suddenly have $100 million and are on an island somewhere, and someone else comes in and has to run this meeting, that the document that you have left behind is something that they can follow and that you can be proud of. The document is there in the case of something unexpected. Make sure the document that you create is something that both of you can turn back on in a time of crisis and be proud of what you have negotiated in the beginning. So that's my top of mind thoughts on contract negotiation. I appreciate everyone's time. Christy, I don't know, I'll throw this back to you.
Sure. We do have a comment from Geneva Green, and she was wondering if we'd be able to get a copy of the PowerPoint. I will be uploading it to slideshare.net, so that, and then posting it on this event page. So if you bookmark this page, you'll have access to that PowerPoint presentation, as well as the link to the YouTube video where this will be archived after this concludes in a few minutes, as well as your certificate for attending. And these are some ways in which that you can stay in touch with Christy, because if you enjoyed, excuse me, if you enjoyed this webinar, you'll probably also really enjoy the advice columns that she writes for Plan Your Meetings. And you'll find those just going to planyourmeetings.com and searching. She does individual advice columns as well as her Beauty in the Brain. You can also go to smeplanners.com/inthenews. And if you want to continue the conversation, Christy has generously given you her email address here, so she's about to head on a plane to Rome right now, but you can also email her, christy.lamagna@smeplanners.com. And if you are in the New York area, we actually do have an event coming up. It'll be August 7th. I'm building the registration page probably in the next week or two, so you may want to bookmark this link. It's planyourmeetings.com/PYMLive-New York-2014, and when it goes live, the tickets will be just $10. Christy is going to be talking about contract negotiations. She's also going to be talking about F&B negotiations specifically as well. There's going to be a live broadcast of the Event Alley show from that particular event. It's going to be a really cool. It's going to be a really cool show. So I hope you can join us for that. Christy, before we go, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, or any kind of parting ideas or thoughts?
Again, if you become good at something that no one else wants to do, that's how, when your office is going to have a layoff or your boss is looking to promote someone, be the person who's indispensable. If someone has not invested the time that you do in negotiating contracts, then take advantage of that. And the other thing is, it takes practice. It takes a while to get comfortable doing it. Everything in life is a negotiation. You say to your boyfriend, partner, spouse, this is where I want to go to dinner, this is where they want to go to dinner. That's a negotiation. If you go through the next 24 hours and think about how many exchanges you have that are actually negotiating. Can we meet at 7:30 for dinner? Actually, no, I can't get there till 8. That's a negotiation. Think about how often you do it, and that should give you confidence when you sit down to do this formally on the phone, because it's second nature. You just don't realize it. And if you have questions, you can always email me, I love contracts. So I'm always happy to help.
Well, thank you so much, Christy. I do believe that you are a tremendous help today.
And
thank you so much for joining us from the airport lounge and making this work on your way to Rome.
A little crazy.
And Mike McAllen, he thanked you earlier, actually, after you asked this question, but I didn't stop you. But he did just post another thing that says all Christy's rule. So, Mike McAllen, thank you. Much love. Yay, PYM.
Indeed. Thank you, Christy.
Cool. So thank you so much, virtual audience, for joining us. Plan well and prosper. Until the next time. Yay, PYM.
Yay. Thank you.